Thank you all for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where today we continue the deepest dive of all time into Linda Thompson and SHEILA RYAN. At this point, she's the only one we've located. We did catch up with Linda in October yesterday, but right now we're still gotta take another look at September 1974 one more time. We're doing that as soon as we come back from a song. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Pamela. Hi, Monica. Thank you all so much for being here. This is Telegram from a Friend. It's in Las Vegas. It's 1969, but it's a lot like 1974. We're going to be in Vegas when we come back, 1974.
The lights came down on Vegas gold. July heat, a crown retold. Applause like thunder, stars align. But one true friend was not in line. A telegram, a quiet grace. From 12 years deep, a loyal face. I read your words, they calmed the flame. In all that noise, I spoke your name. I wish you could have been here, Gary. The velvet night, the roaring crowd. But in my heart, your voice was steady. A whisper soft, a faith unbowed. 4 more weeks, this fire will fade. I'll find my way back through the haze to Graceland's porch where silence sings and friendship wears no stage or wings. The suits, the gifts, the famous hands, they cheered the king, they made demands. But in the mirror doubt would stare, and only you knew what was there. I wrote you lines in trembling ink, not for the press, not for the drink, just for the man who saw me hold beyond the glitter, past the road. Say hello to everyone, I'll be home when this is done. The curtain falls, the echo fades, but you remain my serenade. 4 more weeks, this fire will fade. I'll find my way back through the hay to Graceland's porch where silence sings. Friendship wears no stage or wings.
Thank you all for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. And today we're going to hear those echoes coming from Tom Jones. Can you believe it? Tom Jones. But we're going to do that as soon as we stop by the bookshelf. We always got to stop by the bookshelf. See what I got. Today I got an Elvis trading card. Today's Elvis trading card is a famous picture, but you really can't tell the story of Elvis Presley without it. There it is. It's Elvis, Scotty, and Bill, the Blue Moon Boys. These were the three guys that they recorded That's All Right Mama. They kicked it all off. Now notice that Elvis is the lead singer. All the contracts read that Elvis is the leader of the band. But Elvis is generously standing behind Scotty and Bill. He's put Scotty and Bill first. Now there comes a time in 1957 when Scotty and Bill, they didn't feel like Elvis was putting them first anymore. And they went and told the papers about it. And refused to work for Elvis anymore. A few months later, they worked for Elvis again, but they were no longer weekly paid entertainers. They were paid per gig at that point, or per day, depending on how they wrote the contract with the Colonel, until Elvis went into the Army. This card says Elvis performs his first two release songs, That's All Right and Blue Moon of Kentucky. Nervous in front of the large audience, this is July 30th, 1954, Elvis's legs shake. The crowd goes wild, assuming Elvis is mocking the provocative style of his idol, James Big Chief Wetherington, who was a famous gospel singer at the time. So this is less than a month after he recorded That's All Right Mama, and far less than a month after he recorded Blue Moon of Kentucky. This record's only been out maybe a week or two, because it takes some time to get them all printed and everything. And this is the performance at the Overton Park Shell. Now, that's not where the picture comes from. That's just what the card's about. The picture is from promotional material for Elvis, Scotty, and Bill, and I don't think it's taken until Bob Neal comes on board in 1955. So I think this is either the tail end or the tail end of 1954, very beginning of 1955. I do not believe they had this picture taken prior to that. I'd have to go and check, but maybe somebody will fact check that on me, and maybe I'll turn that into a trivia question. I write a lot of trivia questions. They play them over on the Elvis Effects channel every Friday at 1 p.m. They play trivia and they use the questions. They're very kind people over there. Ron and David. Hi, Patty. Thank you so much for being here. Hi, Deborah. Thank you for being here. Deborah says that she's not doing very well and will be doing therapy in orthopedic doctors, and she's in a lot of pain. I'm sorry to hear that, Deborah. I know that you've had a lot of health issues lately, and we're all pulling for you to come through. Let me see if I'm missing anybody else. Hi, Linda Jewell. Thank you so much for being here. Hi, Brett. Thank you for being here. Hi, Francis. Thank you for being here. So now we can turn to the main reason we're here to hear about Tom Jones. Somehow, Tom's entered the story of September 1974. We thought Elvis had finished his tour at the Las Vegas Hilton and was going to Palm Springs. He gave SHEILA RYAN it was a hank, or well, it was a scarf, and he'd written on it, "I'll see you in Palm Springs." Alana Nash, she thought they went to Palm Springs. But Peter Gralnick, way back in 1998, he said, no, Elvis stayed in Las Vegas for a few days, and he went to a Tom Jones concert. Let's take a look. Here we've got Linda Thompson. We're trying to see everything through Linda's eyes. I don't think she's at this concert, so she's not going to have much to say about it, unfortunately. We've got Sheila Ryan. Sheila Ryan's here. She's going to be part of the events today. Here's our calendar of September 1974. If you've been following the program, you know that we've been through pieces of late 1974. We're trying to ramp into 1975, but goodness, Elvis's life is very deep and complex. So we're trying to set the stage for 75 correctly so we know what kind of shape he was in mentally, financially, health-wise, girlfriends, friends, family, all of that stuff. What are the pressures on Elvis? What's happening to him right now? We've been able to determine from what we've seen so far that we think this is the proper calendar, but we're not really sure. We're fitting in pieces one at a time. We're making some guesses based on what some authors have said, but they were vague in the way they described the events. People, when they give you their testimony of the event, they don't always give you the date either. They like to reference places, years and places, and then you have to go find the date. And that makes things difficult too. But we started on the 1st. It's a Sunday, which is pretty convenient because normally your 1st isn't on a Sunday, and it makes the calendar look real nice. But Elvis is in Vegas. This is the last scheduled day that he actually has performances. He's got a dinner show and a midnight show. But they have to squeeze in one more show because there's just too many people that want to see him. Now, Sheila Ryan is with him during this tour. We're assuming she's there on Sunday, the 1st. I got a heart next to Sheila Ryan. Does that mean Elvis loves her the most? No. If you look over at the legend on the side, SR is Sheila Ryan's initials. So we're using that to indicate when she's known to be there for a day. Or we have a great reason to assume she's there for the day. P is for Priscilla, when we know she's there. And the heart is for Lisa Marie, because she's the only girl in Elvis's life that we absolutely know was the love of Elvis's life. The others argue about it and they try to jockey for position, but there's only one Lisa Marie. She gets the heart. When we put the heart onto the calendar, that will mean we believe Lisa was there, and that would have had an emotional impact on any of those days on Elvis. Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate seeing you. And Francis is asking, how long were Elvis and Sheila together? Well, she started at some point before this. I think she came in 73. I'm not exactly sure. But I do know when she ends, and it's going to be in the upcoming series. We are going to take Sheila all the way through her arc from this point forward. Now, if Lisa is there on the 2nd, which is 3 a.m. in the morning, it's Elvis's final show. It's the extra squeezed in one. We've got Sheila Ryan there. We've got Priscilla there. We've got Lisa Marie there. We know this because we've seen actual quotes from Priscilla and from Sheila Ryan stating that they were there. And then there are like newspaper accounts and such of that Lisa Marie was there. She stood up and she twirled around once for the audience. So we're assuming that Lisa was there on the 1st. Now, I also assume Priscilla's there on the 1st because she came with Lisa, but maybe she didn't have much effect on Elvis that day because I don't know how much time they spent together that day. We don't really have a story about that. But I'm sure Lisa was there and he spent time with her. Because they surely came in for the end of his tour, the last day. They didn't come for the extra 3 a.m. show. Now, I think there's a good chance that Elvis might spend a lot of this day with Lisa Marie. Because the show is over at 5, at 4 a.m. really, but he's probably done with the guest about 5 or 6 a.m. And then we don't really have any reports of what he does later in the day, at least not yet. But it turns out that the following day, he goes to a Tom Jones concert with SHEILA RYAN. Hi, Eb. Thank you for being here. Appreciate seeing you. And that's what we're here to look at today. This Tom Jones concert that Elvis Presley and SHEILA RYAN went to. Now, for some reason, I've got on this particular thumbnail that I used, I've got Tom Jones. He's talking to Elvis Presley. They're looking at each other. Behind them is Joe Esposito and a female. The internet identifies this picture as Joe Esposito and SHEILA RYAN. I don't think that's SHEILA RYAN. It's from a fairly reputable source that's stating who the people are. I'm not very good at looking at these pictures and identifying people. It's something about the 2 dimensions and the ages of the people. So I just can't, I'm never any good at it. So you guys let me know, is that SHEILA RYAN that's with Joe Esposito? I thought it might be Shirley Dew, who was his girlfriend around this time, but I don't think that's Shirley either. I don't recognize her right off the bat. Maybe it is SHEILA. You guys let me know who that is. Eb says Tom Jones copied Elvis's nose. That's funny. Maybe he did. Hi, Corrine. Nice to see you. Thank you for being here. Hi, Roberta. Thank you for being here. Well, Kareem, we're just looking at this picture trying to figure out, is that SHEILA RYAN that's with Joe Esposito? I can't tell. Corrine says, yes, that is SHEILA. Well, that's a very interesting picture of her. I just don't see it, but there she is so that you guys can see her. Francis says she doesn't think it's SHEILA. I'm not the only one. Eb says it is SHEILA. That's interesting. It's 2-2. I don't really count, though, because I know I'm no good at this game. But let's look at this picture. It's a pretty amazing picture. This is Elvis at the Tom Jones show. That's how we know he was there. Now, again, the internet dates the Jones show to the 3rd. I haven't seen anything that makes it positive it was the 3rd, other than the captions that come with the pictures. I have no reason to doubt it's the 3rd. Tom was there. He was in residency at that moment. And we know this because Elvis introduced Tom during his own show a little earlier in the tour, because Tom had come in and he was going to start his residency the next day. So he's somewhere else in Vegas giving this show. And Kareem's asking, is this a new time for me? No, this is the same old time. And so this picture, I think this picture is beautiful, right? Let me catch up in my notes and make sure I haven't missed anything. In August 1974, Elvis gave a big introduction to Tom Jones, who was catching one of his shows. So Tom was in the audience watching Elvis. And now Elvis is in the audience watching Tom. This is just like a couple of weeks later. Elvis introduced Tom by saying, "There's somebody in the audience I'd like you to meet. To me, he's my favorite singer. He's one of the greatest performers I've ever seen in the greatest voice, Tom Jones. There he is. He's too much. Tom, you open at Caesar's Palace tomorrow night, right?" That's another casino somewhere else on the strip. Folks, if you get the chance, go over and see him. And I do think Caesar's Palace is on the strip. I might have to look that up. And Elvis, he's in the Hilton, which is, I think it's downtown Las Vegas. So it's slightly different places, but you reach it within 15, 20 minutes by car. So Elvis is attending this particular performance with SHEILA RYAN. I do have audio of Elvis introducing Tom Jones, not from that August concert, but from an earlier time. Let's listen to what Elvis has to say. It's interesting that Elvis introduces Tom almost exactly the same way as he does in 1974. This was years earlier, in the very late 60s, actually. So I think it shows that Elvis had a spontaneity on stage, but he had some canned jokes that he liked. In other words, at some point he had spontaneously told a joke on stage, and it went over really well. He then canned that joke, and he began to use it periodically later. I've talked about Larry Geller and how he turns on a cassette at certain points in interviews and just repeats things that he's already said. This is Elvis doing something extremely similar. He knows this piece works every time certain elements line up, and then he brings it out and he runs it. It doesn't always go over. And so people talk about he said these jokes and they didn't go over, and they point to them. Well, that's true. In that particular event, it didn't go over. But he'd already used that joke like 50 times. And 50 previous times, people had cracked up, had given him applause, and that's why he knew it was a good bit. And he knew that something had gone wrong between him and the audience when he gave these jokes and they fell flat, because they were proven winners, even though they didn't sound scripted. His comedic timing was really good in the movies. And so sometimes on stage, he seems like his comedic timing is off, but I think it's part of the act. I think he turns a little bit of an Inspector Clouseau thing on. And Linda says Elvis's voice and his laugh are gorgeous. And KCBC says Caesars is right in the middle of the strip on the west side. The old Hilton is just east of the strip, kind of off on its own, at least back then. That's good to know. Elizabeth says she thinks it's part of the act also. Yeah, I think almost everything Elvis ever did on stage, very closely scripted. And even those times where, like we saw on the 3rd, the day before this, or the 2nd, at 3 o'clock in the morning, the day before this show, and Elvis, he kind of got a little angry, it seemed, up on stage, or he said some things. He let loose a little bit, enough that people remember it, and Baz Luhrmann put parts of it in a movie. He thought about what he was going to say before he went out there. Some of it, of course, was spontaneous, off the cuff, but he'd kind of had the channel ready. He had a river he was going to let loose, and he knew pretty much where it was going. And then he went out there and he did it. And he was able to do that because his show was so well aligned and in tune with itself that he knew where he could do these things, and the show still wouldn't collapse. And the show didn't collapse. People loved it. They loved seeing the real him. Now, I do not have a set list from the Tom Jones show. However, I do have a set list from an earlier point in time. It's from June or July 4th, 1974. It's basically the tour or the residency that Tom did right before he did this one, because he came in late August on this. So he'd done a tour at Caesars. He'd been off for a month or so, probably gone somewhere else and performed. Now he's back at Caesars. He's probably running nearly the same show. You really can't get out there and be completely spontaneous every show and have a good show. You gotta have a pattern to follow. Tom, his first song was You Are Looking Good, followed up by You're 16. I Can't Stop Loving You, Delilah, The Most Beautiful Girl, Proud Mary. Now, I know Proud Mary from being a CCR song, Creedence Clearwater Revival. I think they did it better than anybody else. I think it's almost foolish for anyone else to sing it, but looks like Tom was performing it in the middle of his show. That was song 6. He goes on and sings We Had It All, My Way. Well, I thought that was Frank Sinatra's song, then taken over by Elvis, but we've got Tom Jones singing My Way. I wonder if this picture is taken when Tom Jones is singing My Way. Is Elvis thinking, I'm going to do it like that the next time I'm up there? Or is he just enraptured in one of the other songs? Because Elvis really looks like he's into the event. It's rare to get to see Elvis as an attendee at an event, enjoying it, and not as the performer. And KCBC says he likes Elvis's version of Proud Mary, but yes, CCR was the original. And Corrine says Tom Jones had such a strong range of vocals that Elvis admired him for that. And she thinks Tom copied Elvis as far as moves were concerned. I would agree with all of that. And Linda says, Proud Mary, another great version. Tina Turner with all the dance moves. That's a good one, too. I gotta admit that. Tina Turner. Now, I always liked Tina Turner best in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, but that's just because of my age. And that movie was huge when I was a young man. Very, very young. Not even a teenager yet, I don't think. That's how I was introduced to Tina Turner. Green says Tom's vocal ability was much more powerful than Elvis's was. Monica says she thinks Tom used more sex moves and that Elvis was just himself. That's interesting because they accused Elvis of being the guy that invented all those sex moves. Eb says Elvis's version is better. And Francis says, did Tom sing Green, Green Grass of Home before Elvis sang it? Yes. And there's a whole story to go with that. They were headed home one night in the 60s from California. They were in the bus. They had not been back to Memphis for longer than usual. They'd stayed and done 2 or 3 movies in a row. It was a very unusual period. Tom Jones came on the radio, WHBQ. George Klein was manning the desk. He was the DJ at the time. Elvis had them stop the bus. Marty got out. least according to Marty. He made a phone call to George and said, Elvis wants you to play it again. George dedicated it to the guys that were coming home. He didn't say that it was Elvis, but he played the song again. And Elvis had the bus stopped, and he had Marty or one of the guys get out again. They called George. They told him Elvis wants to hear it again. About the fifth time, George says, I'm about to get fired here. And he played it again. So I can't remember how many times they played it, but that's the story that goes with Green, Green Grass of Home. And Corrine says nobody was a threat to Elvis, not even the Beatles. I agree with that. I do think Elvis himself sometimes felt threatened. Monica says Elvis himself said he did nothing wrong. He was just being himself. Well, let's finish off this list of what Tom Jones is singing that Elvis is loving so much here in this picture. His ninth song was She's a Lady. Number 10, I'll Never Fall in Love Again. Number 11, Green, Green Grass of Home. Daughter of Darkness. I Who Have Nothing. Love Me Tonight. And he most likely ended the show with My Soul is a Witness. But this time, during this show, that wasn't the end of the show. Elvis got up on stage during the end of the show, during that last song, and he started a karate routine. And when he finished, Elvis and Tom received a standing ovation. And there's Elvis helping Tom out, trying to end the show with a bang. Tom didn't know he was going to get up on stage. Elvis just went up there. And he pulled these moves. Now, this is Tom Jones at a lunch later on, well, sometime during this tour. And you can see that Debbie Reynolds is with him. Now, somebody correct me if I'm wrong here, but isn't Debbie Reynolds the mother of Carrie Fisher, who was Princess Leia in Star Wars? But she's doing some kind of entertainment, I believe at Caesars, or at least in Las Vegas. The guy at the end of the table in the white, he's holding a champagne glass. That's Liberace. The guy at the left side, that's Tom Jones. He's got the curly hair. But it's Debbie Reynolds in the middle. Hi, Diane. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate seeing you. Corinne's asking, what show time is this? Good question. I think it's midnight. What I've got is Thursday, September 5th, 1974. None of the sources actually give the time, but I believe it's midnight. Might be like 10 p.m. It's probably not after that. And Deborah says she is the mother of Carrie. So here's a Star Wars connection right here. Now, it's not directly to Elvis, but these people, they're all there while Elvis is performing. They all came to his show. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. They all went sometime during the period they were there to see him because they were already there. And then he comes over and he jumps on Tom's stage. And Linda says that's a great story, and she's sad she could only click like once. Thank you so much, Linda. And that'll be my call to tell everybody to make sure you hit the like button. that you hit subscribe, that you hit that bell notification, that you check all the great links that I got for you down in the video description and the pinned comment. That's my little commercial for me. I wrote books. They're down there in the links. I put out records and CDs. They're down there in the links. There's all kinds of other cool Elvis merchandise and books down in the links. But I have some more pictures. It turns out it's Tom Jones' birthday on September 7th. 34 years old. June 7th, 1974. There's a star-studded party backstage at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. This is at 2 a.m. That kind of tells me that his show's at midnight. He does the show at midnight. It runs till about 1:30 perhaps, depending on if somebody else opens the show, I guess. Probably there is some kind of opening act. Then he comes back, and by 2 a.m. they're full into the swing of a backstage party. That's pretty standard for the way that Elvis has worked as well. There's a large birthday cake. You can see it. And the people that are standing around him include Liberace. He's at the far right. He, during this birthday party, Liberace brought his candelabra. He was well known for candelabra, a big thing that holds a bunch of candles. Very fancy, probably silver or gold. And he held it in front of Tom for Tom to blow out as the birthday candles. It's not caught in this picture, but apparently this is a famous story. We've got Debbie Reynolds. She's standing next to Liberace. Diane Warwick is next to Debbie Reynolds. She's out here performing in Las Vegas too, guarantee it. The guy that's standing next to Tom Jones is Sonny Bono. He was married to Cher. There's a woman standing next to Sonny Bono. I do not know who that is. And they did. Joey Heatherton, I think is what this says. I have never heard of her. I'm going to have to look her up now, but Joey Heatherton, I think is who that is. The woman on the far left, she is Joan Rivers. Very famous person, all the way up into the 1990s. Maybe even a little after, into the early 2000s, right? I can't remember exactly when she passed away. Cosmetic-related surgery, if I remember correctly. So this doesn't show Elvis in the picture. They're all at Tom Jones' birthday. Elvis is probably not in town by this point. He's probably gone to Palm Springs. But I think there's like a 95% chance that everybody in this picture attended one of the Elvis performances. The tour that just ended in Vegas, the residency. I think there's probably more than a 95% chance, but maybe one or two of them didn't go because they've seen him before, but I feel like they did. They appear to be very social people that want to hang out at these kind of events. And then each of them, they go to the others' events as well. It shows support. It also creates a spontaneity within the audience, because they don't know if one of these other celebrities is showing up. So part of the reason you go to the live performance is not just to see the person on stage, it's to see who will be there to see them. And then that helps them all out. And Michelle said that Joan Rivers had such a foul mouth. Yeah, she wasn't very filtered. And Mike's mentioned Jeff. I haven't seen Jeff for a few days, so shout out to Jeff Powell. I don't think he's in here right now, right? I don't think I've seen him pop in. But hi, Mike, in case I didn't say hi to you two. This is the same night. You can see what Elvis is wearing. It kind of has a karate feel to it, so he was kind of ready to go. Now, we're really going to want to remember this story for probably 2 or 3 episodes from now, because we're going to get into another time that Elvis went to see a celebrity. Only instead of Sheila, he's going to go with Linda. Her story is going to be, well, it's going to be a doozy. That's probably going to be about 3 episodes from now at the rate that we're going. But in this picture, you can see behind Elvis a couple of fans. One is a much older fan than you might think Elvis would have at this point in time. Maybe, I mean, he's at a car. Maybe it's just somebody at the casino that's happy to see a celebrity in the moment. Or maybe she's a die-hard Elvis fan. She's tracked him down. She was waiting there to see if he's going to get in this car. A lot of fans did that. And Deborah says that I'm putting it mild about Joan Rivers. Yeah, that's true. There was also a thing about Vegas at the time where they went from being fairly clean, and there was like a couple of shock comics that would come out there and just say dirty things. They were usually in one of the side rooms, and some of them are very famous. I'm trying to remember the name of one. He had a show in the 1950s, but you guys have probably never seen it. Buddy, I think was his first name, but I'm blanking out. He said that he got in there to do these shows, and that people just, they're gamblers. They really don't care about these shows, and they would just leave, and he couldn't get anybody to stay. So he just started using foul words, and suddenly the showroom's full. And he became known as this guy that's just going to go out there and say something, and they come to see what shocking thing will this man say today. And that kind of became his bit. It wasn't even funny anymore. It's just, this is what he did. And there were others that began to copy it. And Joan Rivers, because she was a female, and she was attractive as a young lady, most people have no idea what Joan looked like when she was young, because all the pictures are mostly from after she became nationally famous. And she was a fair bit older at that point. But there weren't a whole lot of female comics when she started. And so she would do the same shock bit, and it would just fill up the audiences. Now, I don't really like any of that. Buddy Hackett, KCBC says, yes, that's exactly who I'm talking about. He used to just be like a funny, bubbling guy, and then he becomes like the most foul-mouthed guy out there. And then you got guys like Don Rickles, who weren't exactly foul-mouthed, but they'd go out there and they'd insult you. They became this insult comic thing, although it was all in good fun. And so there wasn't, like later people became very hatefully insulting as comics, and that's not funny at all. But Don, I never was really into Don Rickles, but Bob Newhart loved him. And Bob Newhart, who I think was hilarious, he and Don Rickles were best of friends. He and his Bob's wife, Don, and Don's wife, they used to vacation everywhere together. They went everywhere together. It's just a very interesting relationship. And Kareen's asking if Tom inspired Elvis to get back on the stage. I don't think so, but I think they kind of, they had a synergy between them where they were trying to slightly outdo each other. Now, of course, how can Tom outdo Elvis? He had his moments that Elvis loved, right? So I think Elvis was using Tom, and Tom was using Elvis in a similar way to better their own performances. It's a truly healthy, brotherly kind of competition, similar to what Elvis had with Red at one point. Red was good at music, but Elvis also had that same relationship with Red at like karate and stuff. Francis is asking if Sheila was married to James Caan. That's right. That's coming up within the series, actually. It's actually connected to Elvis. Isn't everything? And I see Mike was saying that Jeff was busy because he's working. Well, good. Hopefully he's earning the money he needs for his family. I should never take priority over anything that you in the audience need to do for your own lives. I'm always available on the replay. Kareen says Tom never spoke ill words about Elvis even to this day. And KCBC says Sonny Bono and Joey Heatherton dated for a few months in 74. Well, I think we saw a part of that few months. That's very interesting. Let's take a look at another picture. Here's Sheila Ryan with Elvis on this night. You don't get a good look at her face, but you can see what she's wearing. She's obviously a beautiful woman. Elvis is happy to have his arm around her. Notice he's got that karate belt on. That's a very fancy special karate belt. It has to do with the certificates that he's earning at this moment in time. He is really into karate right now. Now, he's up here on stage doing a karate demonstration. 2 days before, he did a karate demonstration during his own show, 15 minutes with Ed Parker and Red West. He had the outburst, the one that people think is so bad today, but in context seems very mild, really, just like Elvis was letting people in on a little bit of his personal life that any of us would have said, well, he's awful nice about all that. Because we all know people that were much worse about people they were getting divorced from, or people that those divorced people were dating or whatever. And of course, it's an extra show, 3 o'clock in the morning. He's already done it all. But by the next day, he seems to have bounced back. His health doesn't seem nearly as bad as we may have been thinking at this moment. And that's gotten me to thinking about the difference between actual health and perceived health, felt health. None of Elvis's conditions have stopped. They're all accelerating, actually. His colon's going to be much worse by 1 month from now, less than 1 month. I don't believe it has anything to do with activities he's involved in during this month, but he is especially physically active with the karate. He's also going to be back in Memphis where he's eating very well, perhaps very heavily. By October, he's going to be in a lot of pain, and then they put him into that sleep diet. But at this moment in time, I think he's feeling really good. Now, some people say some of his actions during this time are because he's over-medicated. Well, if he is, he's feeling really good, and it doesn't seem to be altering his ability to perform the karate, which takes a lot of coordination. I'm not sure that what they talk about Elvis having used can also fit with the karate demonstrations or the ability to move your body in this manner. So there's a very complex health issue going on at this moment, but if anybody were just to see Elvis in this picture, they'd say, he's looking good. And Corrine says, what do I mean when I say 3 o'clock in the morning? So the last show Elvis performed was 3 o'clock in the morning on September 2nd. Let's go back a little bit to the calendar. It's hard without looking at the calendar to keep everything straight. On the 1st, And I don't know when Priscilla and Lisa flew in, but I'm pretty sure they're there because that's the last scheduled concerts. Now, at some point, towards the end of the week, I don't know what day or when, they added an extra show that would be at 3 o'clock in the morning. But it'd be on the 2nd, on Monday morning. So the last shows were on Sunday. 3 o'clock in the morning on Monday is when the final show is. It's extra, it's tacked on. Elvis probably knew about it for maybe a couple, 3 days at least. Or maybe he didn't. Maybe they just came on the last day and said, we haven't tracked that down yet. 3 o'clock in the morning, SHEILA RYAN, Priscilla, and Lisa Marie are present. Now, the next day, on the 3rd, they go to the Tom Jones concert. I believe this is midnight on the 3rd. Now, you could say midnight on the 3rd is really the midnight of the 2nd. He does the show at 3 a.m., and then at midnight, he's at Tom Jones' show. We don't have that much clarity. So I think he probably rested for a day, and then by the next day, he's ready to go to this show. Or he may have gone that night. I don't know. But to me, midnight on the 3rd means there were two. They usually do 2 shows, a dinner show and a midnight show. I'm assuming Tom's doing 2 shows, but he may not be big enough to fill 2 theaters in the same night. I don't know. So if he's only doing the midnight show, I think they would normally sell that ticket as the 3rd. You show up 11:30 that night, and then the show's at midnight. And he's saying that final show on the 2nd was the performance where Priscilla and Lisa and SHEILA were there. Right. And I actually read out a bunch of that yesterday. So if you missed that, be sure to check out yesterday's episode. We went over an edited version probably a couple of days before that as well. And Brett says he saw a Vegas documentary, said Elvis saved Vegas in the early 70s. That is partially true. He had a major effect on the way that Vegas, the way they marketed, the way they displayed, the way they did the contracts for the entertainers. But Frank Sinatra and the Rat Pack had a major amount to do with that previously. So if you track Vegas's history all the way through, there's 3 places where it was saved because gambling kind of goes in cycles, which I think probably has to do with the economy. And it's probably not what most people think it is. It's not whether the economy is good or bad. It's whether the economy is at one of the extremes. It has to be terrible or it has to be so good no one can believe it. And we've gone through many of those periods, and that's when Vegas is booming. You've either got to have nothing and then you're willing to risk everything in Vegas, or you got to be in a position where money's just pouring in some other place so you don't mind putting it into Vegas. Let's jump forward a few more pictures just to be sure I've finished off this story. Yeah, that was it. So we have finished off the story of Tom Jones. Turns out that Elvis didn't go directly to Palm Springs. Peter Gralnick, who steered us right on this one, he says there was another show that Elvis went to in Las Vegas. I'm trying to track that one down too and see if we can't make our way in to see it with Elvis like we did this one. But we've reached the end of this hour, so I've got to let everybody go. I do want to thank you all for being here today. I greatly appreciate it. I do love all your chats and your comments, both live and on the replay. We're going to go out on a song like we always do. This song's going to be his heart's desire. This is what Elvis really wanted. He told us in the early 1960s, he said, I want to live to be old. I want to have a wife who loves me. I want to have children who grow up and that I can be proud of. He didn't really want a whole lot. He didn't say anything about money. This song comes from that article, his answers to a reporter. And the reporters were not usually kind to him. This is his heart's desire.
His time came too early, the curtain fell too fast. Before he was ready, before we could grasp the man behind the myth, the ache behind the fame. He wanted something simple, not fortune, not acclaim. 6:03, the threats came down like rain. He spoke of love, not fear, through the shadow and the strain. I wanna live to be old, he said with quiet grace, to remember her love and see our children's face. He didn't ask for gold, didn't dream of a throne. He wanted a family, a place to call home, to be a good man with a heart that could rest, to know he was loved and he'd given in his best. No mansion in the sky, no diamond parade, just the warmth of a hand and the life they made. A whisper of laughter, a child's sleepy sigh, that was the dream he carried inside. He didn't ask for gold, didn't dream of a throne. He wanted a family, a place to call home, to be a good man with a heart that could rest, to know he was loved and he'd given his best.
Elvis had been waiting, sitting there with his guitar, and during the waiting time, we had had a conversation.
Marion McInnes worked at Sun Records.
He said something to the effect, do you know anybody that wants a singer? And I said, well, what kind of a singer are you? And he says, well, I just sing everything. Who do you sing like? I don't sing like nobody. We were probably halfway through the first side when two things happened. First of all, I looked out into the anteroom where all these people had been milling and waiting their turn, and they were all just glued to the window, watching and listening to him. And secondly, I recall that Sam Phillips had said several times that he wished he could find a white singer with the soul and the feeling and the kind of voice to do the song, what were then identified as rhythm and blues song. And I wrote across it, Elvis Presley, good ballad singer, save. And